looks can be deceiving. The Detroit Lions finished 3-12-1 last season. They finished last in the NFC North. They had a top 3 pick in the NFL draft. So this team is bad. Why even talk about this team? Why in the world would I try to explain to you how somehow, some way, this terrible team from last season can win the NFC North in 2020? A lot of people have made this video and they've talked about why the Lions will win the North in 2020. So I thought it's my turn to hop onto the bandwagon and let you guys know what Lions will finally win the NFC North in 2020. So Detroit Lions were 3-12-1 last season. I just want to touch on this really quickly because looks can be very deceiving. If you simply look at the record, obviously 3-12-1, that's one of the worst teams in the league. And there's no reason you should believe that somehow, some way, in one off season, this team could come out of nowhere. Oh, 49ers did that? My bad. Anyways, there's just no way to believe that, right? However, if you look a little bit deeper at that record, you would say, well, maybe not as bad as that record looks. Well, the first obvious one is that Matthew Stafford didn't play for half the season, and without him, you lost every game. You were 3-4-1 before we went down. That doesn't look too bad. That's nearly 500. Now, I'm not trying to say that's a good team. I'm just saying that's not as bad as the record looks. Let's look at some of the games that they played. They tied the Arizona Cardinals. Not a great way to start, but he didn't lose, I guess. You beat the Chargers, who coming into the year were looked at as a playoff team. However, they turned out to be pretty bad. You won on the road versus a playoff team. One of the reasons that Jim Caldwell is not here anymore is not because he didn't win games. It's because he didn't win big games, all right? That's what Bob Quinn had to say. Well, we've done a couple of those under Matt Patricia. And even though our records have been worse, we beat the Philadelphia Eagles, who were a playoff team, on the road last season. Who would have expected that out of a 3-win team? You would have never thought this team would beat a playoff team. And then guess what? You play a team in the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Kansas City Chiefs are the best team in the league last season. All right, they win the Super Bowl. You're playing the Super Bowl champs, and you lose by 4. You have the lead right before the final possession, basically the final possession of the game, and Patrick Mahomes ends up scoring. It was a 4th down conversion. The Detroit Lions needed one stop. They needed one play to put this game away. And they had the lead over Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And let me just throw out this little fun fact. Patrick Mahomes didn't throw a single touchdown, which I believe is the only time he didn't do that this season. The only team he didn't throw a touchdown against was the Detroit Lions. Didn't throw one single touchdown. So I don't know. I'm just pointing that out. Then they play a team in the Packers, and we all know how the Packers game went. If you don't watch Monday Night Football, I don't know what's wrong with you. Everybody knows that was a debacle. I'm not going to get into too much, but come on, man. Yeah, okay. So the Lions are 3-4-1. So maybe that record doesn't look as bad as we necessarily thought it did. But still, is that enough, though, to me to just say, okay, Lions can win the North because 3-12-1 record shows if Stafford's healthy, they can win the North? Okay, I think that's always potentially a chance. However, I'm going to tell you a little bit more on why the Lions will win the North in 2020. As I mentioned before, Matthew Stafford was hurt. When he was healthy last season, Matthew Stafford was on pace for maybe the best year of his career. So on pace for 38 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, the best pass rating of his career, the most yards per attempt of his career, which Darrell Bevell finally brought back because Matthew Stafford, when he takes shots with these weapons that he has, which we'll get to, they make big plays. The Detroit Lions offense was clicking, and Matthew Stafford was playing the best football we've ever seen until he went down with an injury. And that guy's going to be back. See, Matthew Stafford had 7 straight years with 4,000-plus passing yard seasons until a guy named Jim Bob Cooter took over, and in 2018, he finally didn't reach 4,000 yards. Oh boy, what an offensive coordinator can make. The Lions finally brought in a good offensive coordinator in Darrell Bevell, and Darrell Bevell had the Detroit Lions and Matthew Stafford clicking offensively. Before Matthew Stafford was injured, they averaged 25.5 points per game. Matthew Stafford was throwing for over 312 yards per game. Can I say that enough? 312 yards per game? That doesn't even seem real to me. That's an incredible amount. That's what they were doing with Darrell Bevell, and this guy's going to be back. And let me just emphasize that point that I made. The most yards per attempt of his career. When Matthew Stafford takes shots, he's got the arm to do it. He's got one of the biggest arms in the league, and he has some of the best weapons in the league. So we'll touch on that. Now, the Detroit Lions haven't really had to run the game. They really haven't. They've ranked bottom half of the league every single year when it comes to rushing the football. And this offseason, the Detroit Lions made it a mission to improve the running game. See, Kerryon Johnson showed us flashes as his rookie season. A lot of people believe if he was healthy, he would have hit 1,000 yards, but he got injured. And then last season, Kerryon Johnson comes back with a full head of steam. We're excited, and he gets injured. So back-to-back season-ending injuries for Kerryon Johnson, basically season-ending injuries. And then this offseason, we make it a mission to say, hey, let's go get a top running back. And the Detroit Lions in the second round bring in maybe the best running back in this class in DeAndre Swift. They get DeAndre Swift and Kerryon Johnson paired together. 2 former second-round picks are now on the same team. Then in the draft, you add 2 guards. You had one guard who is simply known for run blocking. You had another right guard. And then you add a right tackle who is known for run blocking. You upgrade the offensive line. Okay, you got the left guard position better without losing a major piece. Graham Glasgow walked. You replaced him with Jonah Jackson in the draft, who is one of the best pass protectors in this draft. You lost Rick Wagner, who was really on his last leg, and you brought in Big V. Big V, I can't say his name, that's why I'm saying Big V, out of the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, and this guy graded out better at everything, and he's way younger. So you have him locked up now. So the offensive line, on paper, should be improved. And when you know you have a guy like Darrell Bevell, I can pretty much assume that this offense is going to be really, really good next season. But let's talk about that talent, those weapons. So not only does Matthew Stafford have DeAndre Swift to go to, which he loves passing the ball. If you can remember the last time Matthew Stafford had a running back that is known for catching the ball in the backfield, the guy had 80 receptions in a season. Theo Riddick had 80 receptions for over 600 yards in one season at the running back position. All right? DeAndre Swift is better than Theo Riddick, I will say that now. So what do you think is going to happen when you get a guy in Swift who catches better and he runs better, and you pair him with Kerryon Johnson, who's hungry? I'm just saying, it should be pretty nice in the backfield. The Lions may actually finally have a running game, which we haven't got to see. And when we do see it here and there, the glimpses of 100-yard rushers, Matthew Stafford rarely ever loses. So, oh snap, the Lions have a running game. How are you going to stop this offense? This might be like the next Chiefs kind of thing. It's just a great offense. But now let's look at the talent they have on the outside. Aside from the running back position, the Detroit Lions have maybe the best receiver group in the league. One of the top receiver groups. Between Kenny Galladay, who's one of the top wide receivers in the league, over 1,100 yards, led the league in touchdowns. Between Marvin Jones Jr., who's another top wide receiver in the league, who still could probably be wide receiver number one for other teams, or you could list him as that or think about him as that. Now it's kind of thought as Kenny Galladay is, because Marvin Jones Jr. is still a heck of a wide receiver. You have Danny Amendola, who's Mr. Reliable, who Tom Brady used for years, who's coming off one of the best seasons of his career as well with Matthew Stafford. Okay, you have other weapons. You drafted Quintez Cephas. You have Marvin Hall, who averaged nearly 40 yards reception. So the weapons are on deck. At tight end position, you have the top tight end that you drafted from a year ago in the 2019 draft, T.J. Hockenson. The best tight end. You took him at number 8. And you also have Jesse James, who you gave big money to help block and catch in the red zone. Okay, the monster, the 6'7" tight end. So you have weapons on deck. There's no reason that if Matthew Stafford is healthy, this offense is one of the best in the league. Now let's hop on the defensive side of things. Because the offense, it's really not hard for me to make an argument, but here is where it gets tricky. The Lions defense last season was one of the worst in the league, and this is a huge reason that the Lions defense kind of let them down last season. All right, it was really, really bad. They were just terrible across the board. They were 31st in yards allowed, allowing basically 400 yards a game. 400 yards a game. They allowed the most passing yards in a season, 4,500, and they were 21st against the run, and they were 26th in points allowed. That's not a very good defense. And if you simply look at that, you'd say, to like many fans do that, really don't pay attention to the Lions, and just not a good coach then. He's a defensive mind. He's just not a good coach because he hasn't proven us that he can make it work. Well, there was a lot of problems that came up last season that is easily forgotten about. One, the injury bug, which I know everybody has, so I'm really not going to say too much on that. Detroit Lions also lost some big vets. Detroit Lions lost Glover Quinn, who was their leader in the back end. They lost Glover Quinn, right? Glover Quinn was an absolute beast in the back end, and they lost him. And now it's Tracy Walker and Will Harris, a two-year player and a rookie, trying to hold down the safety position, which is a vital position in this defense. You trade away Quandre Diggs, who was your other safety. So your two starters are gone. All of a sudden, his two stars are gone. Slade has the worst season of his career, and it's just thought that, okay, maybe Slade is just not playing well. However, when he is actually traded, it all comes out that Slade did not want to be here. So it's basically addition by subtraction because you're not going to win with that. I'm pretty sure most people watching this know about the Slade situation. All right, and you just got better by moving on from Darius Slade. Maybe the same thing with Quandre Diggs because he doesn't want to be here. And I'm not saying who's right or wrong. I'm just saying, hey, if you don't want to be here, you're not going to be successful if you have those guys. Snacks Harrison is coming off the worst season of his career. Okay, Snacks Harrison had the worst season of his career, and all of a sudden, it's like, what the heck is this defense turning into? Oh yeah, and then you have a guy named Paul Pasqualoni as your defense coordinator. Let me just say it was a mess last season. Like I said, Snacks had the worst season of his career last season. Well, why does that matter? Well, in 2018, a lot of people forget the Detroit Lions were actually one of the best defenses in the league. 2018, the Lions defense was really, really good. Detroit Lions defense finished top 10 in nearly every category except for points allowed, which was 16th. Detroit Lions had one of the best defenses in the league in 2018 in first-year Matt Patricia, under first-year Matt Patricia. Okay, and why? Well, Darius Slade was playing a lot better. Matt Patricia just came in, so the relationship wasn't as bad. You had veteran safeties. All right, you had a guy in Snacks Harrison who balled out for the Detroit Lions, and the defensive tackle position is very vital. So everything kind of just went downhill and flipped at the wrong time. I mean, it was just a domino effect offensively. It wasn't like one thing that Detroit Lions could fix. As a whole, it was a complete mess when it came to the trade deadline. So now, let's talk about what the Lions did for the defense. Detroit Lions brought in a new defensive coordinator. This was a secondary coach with the Philadelphia Eagles in Corey Undlin. Now, Corey Undlin is known for making his players better. Corey Undlin came into a Philadelphia Eagles defense that was ranked one of the worst against the pass. And every year they slightly improved. And even one season, they led him to a Super Bowl and beat Matt Patricia and the New England Patriots and had one of the top half pass defenses in the league. Corey Undlin is known for making his players better with not great talent. Is it safe to say that the Lions have more talent in their defensive back room right now? Possibly. That's why this offseason they made it a mission to go get Darius Slay, because they knew they had to improve that. So under Corey Undlin, he was kind of just without a lot of talent. So you bring him in, and a lot of people want to say, okay, well, how's this going to work? Well, Matt Patricia's still going to be that guy defensively, right? He's going to be making the calls. But Corey Undlin is known as a specialty guy for helping out the secondary. And if you look at last season, giving up the most passing yards out of any team, you probably need that. The thing is, Corey Undlin should adapt perfectly. See, the Philadelphia Eagles don't blitz either. The Detroit Lions are known under Matt Patricia not to blitz. Now, the Patriots do. The Lions haven't. The Lions have not with Matt Patricia. Maybe that changes. But what we've seen is that he doesn't. But what we've also seen is that neither does the Philadelphia Eagles. The one team that blitzed less than the Detroit Lions in 2018, you guessed it, the Philadelphia Eagles. 16% of the time to Detroit Lions, 16.9% of the time. Neither of these teams blitz. Jim Schwartz doesn't blitz with the Philadelphia Eagles, even though he seems like he would all the time. So this guy's going to adapt perfectly because he's already used to how the Detroit Lions want to do things. Not blitzing, a lot of man-to-man, mixing some cover 3 zone, mixing some zones here and there. But it's a lot of man, and it's not much blitzing. And he's used to that. He's going to be prepared for that coming in from the Philadelphia Eagles, and he should be successful here. And that's why he's the perfect candidate to bring in for that defense coordinator position, basically your secondary coordinator, I would say, because this is that guy that should make your secondary a lot better. Well, yeah, I mean, coaches can help, but, they can't do everything. So now you got to bring in some players. And they did. They brought in some players. The Detroit Lions got rid of Darius Slay, as I mentioned, and that leaves a big hole. But the Detroit Lions, at the same time, brought in Desmond Trufant first, who I will say has not had his best seasons or his best career recently. But at the same time, Desmond Trufant's not a bad corner when you get pressure, just like every other corner. You also brought in Jeffrey Okudah, who was the top cornerback in this draft. You have Amani Oruwariye off his first season, where at times he was the Lions' best cornerback on the field. You have depth. You have Justin Coleman, who is one of the highest paid slot cornerbacks for a reason. So the quarterback group is looking even better than it was last year, and on a secondary defense coordinator. Now, what's one point I emphasize defensively? The safety position. All right, you trade away Quandre Diggs and you lost Glover Quinn. You need a veteran back there. Well, now Tracy Walker's going into his third year. But you also brought in another guy for the Patriots named Darrell Harmon. And Darrell Harmon is that new vet back there. Known as the closer, a guy that's had 17 career interceptions, is now a Detroit Lion. The Lions had needed that in the back end because they haven't had that. Tracy Walker tackled. This guy had 100 tackles. But they don't have a guy in the back end that can seal off games after they lost Glover Quinn. That was Quinn's job. Now they have Darrell Harmon, who does the same thing. And now everybody's going to say, well, they're trying to copy the Patriots. It ain't going to work. But they're not bringing in bad players. Just because they're bringing in Patriots isn't bad. And again, it makes sense for Matt Patricia because they fit the scheme perfectly, especially when the training camp is really weird this offseason. So you have Darrell Harmon. You bring in Danny Shelton, who's a replacement for Snacks Harrison. Yes, I got to it. And Danny Shelton's coming off one of the best years of his career. And the Lions got him for a steal for $8 million. The Detroit Lions brought in Danny Shelton. Then you bring in Jamie Collins, who's, a great linebacker who fits the Lions scheme perfectly. He can blitz and drop back into coverage, and he's probably our best coverage linebacker. And he's also a veteran linebacker that we haven't had for guys like Jelani Tavai, who's a second-round pick, for like Jared Davis, who was a first-round pick, for like Reggie Ragland, who was also a first-round pick. So now you have a veteran there who fits the scheme right away and is really going to help the Detroit Lions because he can play both the edge rusher position and the interior linebacker position. So those are 3 main Patriots you brought in. You brought in Desmond Trufant. The Detroit Lions as a whole upgraded this season. Every positional group looks better than it did last season. And you finally have maybe coaches that know what they're doing. The thing is, Matt Patricia's shown us that the defense that he runs can work. It can succeed. 2018, it worked. Now you just need to make it work again, and maybe it just takes having the right players. And the Detroit Lions had that on paper, and in a must-win year for Matt Patricia, that third year's the charm. That could be the case for Detroit Lions, like the San Francisco 49ers. They could bounce back in 2020. You can simply look at the Detroit Lions roster defensively from 2019 to what it's supposed to be in 2020 and see improvements at every single position. At the safety position, they have Darrell Harmon, Tracy Walker, Will Harris. Last season, they didn't have Darrell Harmon. That's just an improvement on its own. They also brought in some depth with Jerron Kearse. The Lions went way off in special teams additions with guys like Elijah Lee, Tony McRae, J-Ron Kearse. A lot of special teams players were brought in. Linebacker group, not really any major losses. All you do was add a potential player that can, somehow figure it out. Reggie Ragland, who's a former second-round pick. You added Jamie Collins, who will now be their best linebacker. At the pass rusher position, you moved on for Devon Kennard, but you brought in Julian Okwara, who's a replacement in the third round. You have young pass rushers in Deshaun Hand, Austin Bryant, Julian Okwara. A lot of guys that are pretty much unproven because we haven't really got to see them. But in 2018, when Snacks Harrison played well, guys like Romeo Okwara, who couldn't make the team for the Giants, had 7.5 7.5 sacks. The cornerback position looks it looks miles better. Maybe the Lions' strong suit defensively. The cornerback group looks much better. Across the board looks better. And when the Lions need to win football games, Matt Patricia needs to win games, Bob Quinn needs to win games to save their jobs. This is the opportunity when the NFC North looks kind of down, or maybe a little bit at a point where it's a little bit vulnerable to take over. This is where the Lions need to do it. They've been in these positions before where they could take it over. They just haven't. This is their opportunity once again, and it's an opportunity for Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn to save their jobs for the future as well. To win the NFC North will be something the Lions haven't done in decades, in years. The Lions just don't do this. They don't have these big years, and this is an opportunity for Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn to get a lot of love from everybody, because they would be absolutely loved in Detroit if they could figure this out. The Green Bay Packers kind of have a mess over there with Jordan Love being drafted, and there's been a lot of rumors on what the heck's going on with Aaron Rodgers. That could mean good, or that could mean bad for the Packers. It could mean Aaron Rodgers goes out and balls out, or it could mean that's kind of a messy relationship, rocky relationship, and they're not that great next season. And that 13-3 record to me didn't seem like they were as good as that 13-3 record showed. When you look at Titans like Minnesota Vikings, they're probably the most stable team of the other three. Are you taking Kirk Cousins or Matthew Stafford? I think most people are taking Matthew Stafford. And then when you look at the Chicago Bears, they still don't even know who their starting quarterback is, whether it's Nick Foles or Mitchell Trubisky. I can bet you that will not be the team that's keeping the Detroit Lions from winning the NFC North. So, this is an opportunity for the Lions to do it. Can they do it? Let's see if they can make it happen. I think they will. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.